I just started seeing the sweat going down Galata's face, and I seen Mike's muscles starting to twitch in his arm, and I knew something was going to happen. So I had the program in my hand and a what do you call it, scripto, and I stepped in between them, and I said, I went like this. I go, "Hey, Mike, can I have your autograph?" And Mike, what? I said, "Can I have your autograph?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I handed him my program and the pen, and he signed it. Well, then Galata taps me on the shoulder.
Like, you want
like
mine
this.
too?
I go, and I turn around. I go, "What do you want?" He goes, "How come you don't ask me for my autograph?"
Podcast episode 10. We've got Frank Garza, a referee since 92. You've been a judge since 85. So you've been in the boxing community for a really long time. And you're from Lincoln Park, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have someone from the Detroit area here showing love. Thank you so much. I don't know. We can just get started with, I guess, in general. Frank, how did you get started into reffing? Was it just a fandom for boxing, or was it something else?
No, being downriver, we had a lot of boxing clubs in the downriver area, and I belonged to the Southgate Boxing Club. And my trainer was Nick Torres. And Nick used to bounce around. He would train at the Southgate Training Center, Allen Park Boxing Club, Melvindale Boxing Club, Riverview, River Rouge. He had about 6 boxing clubs that he ran. And I was a little older than everybody else, and Nick was up in his 80s, and he said, "Listen, why don't you help me train some of these guys and start working the corners?" So I started doing that. And then we had an event at the Southgate Hockey Center, and I wasn't happy with the decisions that were made, and kind of got in a little argument with some of the officials and all that. And one of them challenged me. They said, "If you think you can do a better job, why don't you give it a shot?" And I says, "Okay." And he gave me a rule book, and he says, "I want you to read it." And I took it home and I read it. Make a long story short, I found out that I did know everything like I thought I did. And I picked up the phone, the guy had his name and phone number in there. I didn't even know him. And I called him up on the phone and I said, "Hey, listen, I'd like to give you the rule book back, but first I want to apologize to you. I didn't know everything, and this book really enlightened me. And the other thing that I want to apologize for is that I lost my temper. And that's something that we shouldn't have in sports, because that's not what sports is about. So I says, I really feel bad about this." And he just said, "Wow." He says, "I never expected a phone call like this, And he says, "I think you would make a good official." So he says, "Why don't you keep the rule book and become a boxing official?" And I says, "Okay." So I went back to Nick Torres and I said, "Nick, I want to become a boxing official. Can you help me in this?" And he said, "Yeah." He says, I've got this young kid that I know, and he's a boxing referee, and I'll introduce you to him and he'll get you started. So I'm thinking I'm going to meet someone my own age, and he introduces me to Bobby Watson, who's about 60 years old. But to Nick, since he's in his 80s, he's a young kid to him. Yeah. So then Bobby became my mentor and taught me how to become a boxing official, both a judge and a referee. And I wanted to actually, now this is interesting here. I wanted to get started in the amateurs, but they closed the door on me. Let me be honest. Officiating is a very good old boy network system. And you run into this. I run into this stuff my whole life. And, you hear about this in the younger generations today, but let me tell you, the good old boy network has been around for years and years and years. And you have to learn how to work with it and work around it. Mm-hmm. And when the amateurs, I went back to Bobby and I said, "The amateurs aren't letting me into the program." And he says, "The heck with them." He says, "Why do you want to fool around with the amateurs?" He said, "Let's get you started in the pros." So I actually started in the pros first. And after I was established in the pros, the amateurs approached me and said, "Hey, listen, We could use you in the amateurs.
Wow.
So can I ask, how old
so
were
I
you
actually,
when you started doing all this?
30 years old.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. So is there
Yeah,
a
I
big
started
difference
the
then?
Southgate Boxing Club about 26.
Okay.
Go
And then
ahead.
is there a big difference then? I mean, I know obviously the rules are different, but like your demeanor when you're reffing, as comparison when you're reffing a pro or, a amateur bout, do you have to change up how you ref at all?
Yeah, I got established in the amateurs, and I became our district chairperson and chief of officials. So I was responsible for training the officials in the amateurs here in the Detroit metro area back in the 90s. And I always gave this analogy that I had a switch in my back, amateur pro, and you had to approach the bouts in a different way. And if you couldn't flip that switch, then you had to choose between one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And some officials can't. So you have some officials, they're the best amateur boxing official you'll ever have, but they'll never make it in the pros, and vice versa.
That's very
So
interesting.
what's the major difference when you're doing you're reffing a pro compared to you reffing an amateur boxing match? What's the major difference?
One of the major differences, and that's a good question, Mo, is that when you're dealing with the professionals, they should already know their trade.
Mm-hmm.
But in the amateurs, you run into individuals that they're just now learning how to perform in the sport.
Yeah.
So you handle them in a more gentle way. You may see them make a mistake, and at the end of the bout, you might go to the coach. You establish a repertoire with the coach, and you say, "Listen, I don't want to butt in, but your student here, he's doing this or he's doing that," and you develop a repertoire, and the coaches appreciated that. Whereas in the pros, you can't say anything because that can be construed as coaching,
Right.
and you're overstepping a bound.
That's
Gotcha.
very
Okay.
interesting. Really cool. I'm going to go ahead and assume that there's been some amateurs that you've officiated that you've then officiated as professionals. Am I correct?
Yeah, and that's been one of the big joys in my career, is to officiate a young man or young girl that was an amateur, and then referee them or judge them as a pro. And then the ultimate is to do them in a world championship fight. And two guys that come to mind is Floyd Mayweather Jr. and James Toney.
Wow.
I'm sure that there's others, but those are the first two that come to my mind.
So you've
The-
done all three stages with
And
Floyd then?
Yes, I refereed him in the amateurs, and I think I refereed his second professional bout in Grand Rapids, which was an interesting fight card because Roger was the main event, and I'm trying to think of there's a third brother there. It's Jerry or Gary, no, Jeff Mayweather,
Oh, really?
and then Floyd. So all three of them were on the card.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Man, so okay, well
Yeah.
then we might as well get into it since you've refed him on multiple different occasions as an amateur and a professional, and then a title bout. As far as Floyd goes, his legacy now that he's gone, like, do you have him up there as one of the greatest, especially since you've seen him so up close and personal? How did you assess him as a boxer?
In my opinion, he was the most talented boxer I have ever seen. His reflexes and his ability to move in the ring are unbelievable. They're second to none. I've seen him stand in front of a boxer, as I'm refereeing, and a boxer throw a punch, and that's as much as he moved his head like that and avoid the punch. It's uncanny to see him in the ring, and he's a gentleman. He was always a gentleman to me.
Mhm.
I can't say one bad word about Floyd Mayweather. Just to me, one of the top athletes in the world.
It's got to be. Right.
So I have a question. So you talk about Floyd being the greatest. What's been one of your most memorable moments as being a ref?
There's been so many. I really wouldn't even know where to begin. One of the highlights, believe it or not, was having my mother come to a fight card that I did in my hometown back in Ohio. She had never. She was probably one of my biggest fans.
Yeah.
I would go to visit her, and she had pictures of me in the ring hanging on her wall, in the refrigerator, and stuff like that. And there was 10 kids. I was the third oldest of 10 kids. So when you have a family gathering and your picture's on your mom's refrigerator and nobody else's is,
you got bragging rights.
Gives you some bragging right. So I was able to take my mom to a fight that I was refereeing, and that was memorable. I mean, that was something I did.
For sure.
Another fight was I did a Michael Carbajal fight in Iowa, and it was a little town in Iowa that the last professional boxing show they had there was Henry Armstrong. So it's been like 60 years since they had a boxing show in this town.
Jeez.
And it's a pretty big town. I mean,
Jeez.
like Cedars Rapids or something like that,
Yeah.
And they rode out the red carpet. I mean, you were the biggest celebrity in town. Everybody knew that you were there and what they were there for, and ESPN was there, and it was to me, it was bigger than like going to New York or Las Vegas or anything like that. Mm-hmm. This was it. You were the man.
Wow.
And of course, the Tyson Galata fight here in Detroit, that's
Frank,
another one.
We got to talk about that. I mean, Tyson's one of my favorite fighters ever. We can kind of get into it. I think that, if it was for, if it wasn't his personal life and everything that got in the way, he could have been the greatest heavyweight that we've ever seen. So when you reffed him, this was after jail, right? This was after, the aura of Mike Tyson was kind of gone. Was his, what was his energy? What was his demeanor like in the ring? Was it ferocious, like as everyone claims it to be? Was he nice to you? How did that work out for you?
Well, it was a funny situation, the whole event. Now, you have to remember that Mike was coming off of the biting the ear incident.
Mm-hmm.
And Galata was coming off that debacle they had in New York City with, was it Riddick Bowe? And he got that name, the foul pole, because of the low blows that he had delivered.
Yep.
So the media wasn't looking at this as being two heavyweights coming together. They were looking for a train wreck. And that's how they were building it up, that everything was going to go wrong. And even Sports Illustrated, prior to the fight, did a story. And they said, here's Frank Garza, the big sucker in the middle. And I took offense to that. I did.
For sure.
I didn't see this as being something that I didn't see this as a joke. This was a career-changing bout for both of these guys. And I sat both of them down and with the media, and I said, I'm giving both you guys absolution. This is like you just came into the confessional booth, and I'm forgiving both of you for your sins of the past. Forget the past. It's the future. The present and the future is all that matters. And whoever wins is going to go forward. And how you perform and do your duties is also going to carry on to what lies ahead. So that was the way that I approached it. And there was all kinds of things going on that week. This was the only time in my career that one of the promoters hired a professional public relations firm out of New York City to handle my scheduling, because I was constantly being interviewed, questioned by news media as far as from Australia, Germany, Japan, and scheduling interviews of what I was going to do, what I wasn't going to do. And I didn't want anything to go wrong. I felt I took a personal responsibility that I could not allow anything to go wrong, because this sport has given me so much that I didn't want this to be a spectacle. I didn't want it to be a joke. I wanted it to be a true sporting event.
It really was too. I mean, it was a great fight. Obviously, I think it got switched to a no contest after so Tyson knocked out Galata, correct? And then he tested positive for marijuana, I'm pretty sure, the next day or something like that. And it was switched to a no contest.
No. Galata quit in the corner.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And then the drug test came back negative. But to tell you some of the things that went on during that event, at the weigh-in, they brought me in and they wanted me to stand between both boxers and help with the weigh-in. This was some publicity thing. Okay. So they both get on the scales and they weigh. And let's see, you had Gary Shaw, I think was with Mike Tyson, and Dan Goosen was on the other side, or vice versa. But it was Dan Goosen and Gary Shaw were two of the several promoters that were involved in this event. And after they weighed in, they wanted to do a face-off. And I don't like face-offs. Too much can go wrong. Okay. So I'm standing there and they start staring at each other and they get the pictures and they say, okay, you can move. Well, neither one would move. And I just started seeing the sweat going down Galata's face, and I seen Mike's muscles starting to twitch in his arm, and I knew something was going to happen. So I had the program in my hand and a what do you call it, scripto, and I stepped in between them and I said, I went like this. I go, hey Mike, can I have your autograph? And Mike, what? I said, can I have your autograph? And he goes, yeah. And I handed him my program and the pen, and he signed it. Well, then Galata taps me on the shoulder.
Like, you want
like
mine too?
I go, and I turn around, I go, what do you want? He goes, how come you don't ask me for my autograph? And I said, well, I am. I'm going in alphabetic order first. And he goes, oh, okay. So then when Mike gave me the program back, I said, okay, now it's your turn. And then Mike left. Andrew signed it. And he's, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And he left. But I had to break that tension that was there.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I remember the look on Dan Goosen's face when that happened. He just went, oh. He just like,
thank God.
He knew something was going to happen. He goes, thank God. He goes, thank God. Well, here's the part. So there's a New York sports writer in front.
Okay.
And he hollers out, he goes, did I just see what I thought I saw? And I know the guy,
Mm-hmm.
I says, mind your own business. Something along the lines of that. And he says, I am going to have you removed from the referee. You cannot ask a fighter for their autograph and then referee. Okay. Now I can understand his thought, but it wasn't that I was asking them for the autograph because I wanted their autograph. I just didn't want them punching each other, and I had to break the tension.
I was going to ask that.
So I said, whatever. Yeah. And I left.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But here's what happened. I got home and the Nevada Commission called me, who has nothing to do with the event. And it's Mark Ratner, and Mark Ratner and I are very good friends. And Mark goes, Frank, I heard some very, very bad news about you today, but I want to get your side of the story. He said, did you ask Mike Tyson for his autograph in front of the TV people? And I says, here's what happened. And I explained it to him. And I says, not saying anything, but it's really none of your business anyway.
Yeah, it was in Detroit, you said,
And
right?
he goes, well, he says, I don't know. And I says, wait a minute. I says, here's the deal, Mark. Mike Tyson gave me an autograph and then he walked off and he went. Nothing happened. I said, not like that event where Mike Tyson punched somebody and hit
Right.
Jose Suleiman, who was standing behind the curtain,
Right.
and almost
Right.
killed the guy. I said, that I was angry. I was angry. And I said, that happened in your state. It didn't happen in our state. And that was the end of the discussion.
That's very
Wow.
weird that the Nevada Athletic Commission would call you, because you said it was in Detroit, right?
Yeah, it was at the Palace of Auburn Hills. But there were so many people or referees that wanted that bout. And the state of Michigan, when they assigned me, one of the people in the department said, Frank, we want you to know that we have received so many calls saying this or that, but in our opinion, you are the guy that we want. And that's the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be the referee. And that really made me feel good that the state had that much confidence in me.
Sure.
It really made me feel good.
For sure.
So I wanted to ask, so as you're prepping and you know that day for a fight, like what's your game, that fight day prep look like for a ref? What does that look like for you?
You know, everybody's different, Mo, but that is a great question. And in my training seminar, that's something that I cover, preparation. And for me, when I go in to do a championship bout or a big bout or even a fight card, but at different levels, the first thing is rest. I want to relax. I take everything off of my agenda. I'm not going to watch TV. I'll do some light reading. I'll review the rules, and then I'm going to try to figure out what time I'm going to be in the ring, so that I can plan what time I'm going to eat. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is what it is that I'm going to eat. It's very important.
Right. Very smart. Yeah.
You want something that is going to, you want something that's going to give you the energy for the night, because when you're doing a main event, it may be 10 or 11 o'clock at night before you get to eat, into the ring.
Yeah.
And they're taking you to the ring at 5:30 in the evening, and there's nothing to eat at the arena other than hot dogs and popcorn. So you have to have your meal right around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So those are the kinds of things that I do, and I review the rules. I make sure I have everything that I need, my equipment, my uniforms in order. I rest, and I'm not ashamed to say this. And then I pray the rosary before I leave my room.
That's awesome. Is there when you're in the ring, I mean, I'm sure it's different, depending on the magnitude of the fight. Has there ever been a time, whether it's Mayweather or Tyson, I know you've reffed some of the, biggest fighters in the world. Have you ever had like the pregame jitters? Are you ever in the ring like, wow, like this is insane that I'm standing with these two people right now?
Every day, every time you go in the ring, I have butterflies. No, I'm serious. I have doubts. I have butterflies. I have questions. I get nervous. And that's a good thing. I don't think that you ever want to be overconfident. And then I continually ask myself questions. What if this happens? What am I going to do? What will I do if this happens? What am I going to do if I cramp up, this or that, And I pull on past experiences. I did a James Toney fight at Holy Redeemer, and it must have been 120 degrees in there and no ventilation. And I pulled cramps like there was no tomorrow in my legs. And to this day, I don't know how I was able to do the 10 rounds and get it done. If you've ever had a cramp, I had them in my toes. I had them in my arches. I had them in my calves. It was horrible.
The foot cramps are like, they easily the worst thing is a foot cramp.
Yeah, because every time you step, it's just like, oh my
yes.
Lord.
Oh,
Yeah, you can't, man.
And what makes it worse, what compounds the pain, is the mat. You're not walking on a hard surface.
Oh yeah, it
You're
bounces.
walking on a, yeah.
so no, yeah.
So it's
Wow.
horrendous. It's pain.
So I know,
man.
you know, I'm not as well versed in boxing as, you know, you and Ethan are. So I always wanted to know, like, as a ref, when you're going into the boxer's locker room, what things are you discussing with them as they, you know, as you prepare for the fight, and making sure that you cover certain things? And like, what are some of the things that they will normally discuss with you? Like, okay, we want to look for this or we want to look for that.
Mo, that is the most important time of a referee in the entire fight, is when he goes into the dressing room before the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that is the only time that you actually get to meet the boxer face to face. There are rule meetings, weigh-ins, and other things like that, but sometimes you're isolated from them, or especially for the rule meet, we have a pre-fight rule meeting, and the boxers never come to that because they just got off the scales, and the first thing they want to do is eat. They want to and rehydrate. So going into the dressing room is, for all intents and purposes, the first time that you have a face-to-face encounter with the boxer. And the first thing that I do when I go in there is I stop at the doorway and I look all over the room. I treat it as a crime scene. And I walk over to the trash can and I just glance down into the trash can to see what's in the trash can. I look at the table, see what they have on the table, make sure there's no illegal substances in there. And then the next thing I do is, you know, you have what we call our pre-fight instructions. And this is the time where you have to read the boxer. Each boxer is unique in their own individual way. And you have to figure out how to get into their head so that they respect you. And you can't be a friend. You can't come in here and say, "Oh, hey, Mo, how you doing, buddy?" You know, right away they know you're a fake.
Right.
Okay. The other thing you can't do is you have to realize that many boxers, not all of them, but many boxers have come from a part of society that does not respect or recognize authority, or that authority has been a problem to them in their life.
For sure.
So the other thing you can't do is now you listen here, Mo, I'm talking to you. You hear me? You can't do that, because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to shut their mind off and they're not going to listen to a word that you say. So my approach is to come up and say, "Hi, Mo, my name's Frank Garza. I'm going to be the referee of your bout. We've never met. I know that you know the rules and regulations of the sport, or you wouldn't be at this level where you are today. So there's really no reason for me to go through all the rules and regulations. I think what's more important is for you to find out a little about me and how I referee and how I move around the ring. So let me give you a little explanation of what my job is and what I'm to do." And then I explain things to them like, "Mo, if I say something to you or to the other boxer, you'll know who it is that I'm talking to. I don't want you to look at me. I always want you to focus in front to the guy that's in front of you. I won't consider that being disrespectful. I don't even want you to acknowledge me that you heard or you didn't hear, because I know you'll hear by the way that I say it. I just want you to focus on that person in front of you. If there's any reason that I have to have your full attention, I'll call timeout, send the other guy to the neutral corner, then I'll stand right in front of you and you and I will have a discussion." Okay, we clear on that? Okay, so you develop this feeling of trust and respect between yourself and the boxer, and that's what you try to establish. Then on the technical part, you go through the part of how you're going to handle if the mouthpiece comes out. or if there's a knockdown,
Mhm.
you know, and you, those are the only rules that you really cover. Now, I won't mention the boxers, but this happened in the dressing room one time. Both boxers were known to be headbutters. They both used their head quite a bit.
Mhm.
So I went into the dressing room, and before I even said anything, the trainer got into my face and he said, "You know, that other guy uses his head a lot, and I don't know what you're going to do, but nobody else does anything about it, and I'm getting sick and tired of it. And I said, whoa, I said, please. I said, let me speak to your boxer first. And then after I'm done, I'll address any questions or concerns that you have. And we'll go from there. Is that okay, sir?" He said, "Yeah, fine." I said, "Fine, okay." So then I turned to the boxer and I says, "Listen," I said, "the first thing I want to tell you is that this guy uses his head a lot. So I don't know what kind of trainer you had, but if the guy didn't teach you how to handle a guy that comes in with his head," I said, "I'd get myself a new trainer, okay?" And then I went into everything I had to say. And afterwards, I turned to the guy. I said, "Okay, you got a question?" He said, No, get out of here." I said, "Okay." So, you know, you have to be a part-time, you know, you have to just kind of read the scene and go from there.
Frank, did you watch the second Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight?
Yeah, I watched both of them.
Okay, I wanted to bring that up because it reminded me of what you were just talking about. So after the fight, and obviously we all know Tyson Fury laid an ass whooping on Deontay Wilder in that second fight. Deontay came out with all these claims and stuff like that, saying that there was egg weights and stuff like that in Tyson Fury's glove, all the stuff that, I don't know. I just wanted you to speak to. I'm pretty sure the protocol is with gloves, they have to be sent in the night before to whatever state commission, correct? So there's no way there could have been any tampering there. And you're there when they're wrapping their hands, correct?
Okay, let me go through the procedure of the gloves in a championship fight. There's a rule meeting, and at the rule meeting, the promoter must present to the sanctioning body supervisor 4 sets of brand new gloves, still wrapped in the package. Okay, they're opened up at a table. Now you have the champion and you have the challenger. Now, when I have been a supervisor, I will say to the champion, "Here's the deal. You can go first, then the challenger can go second, but then the challenger is going to go third, and you're going to get what's left over. Or you can let the challenger go first, you go second, you go third, and then the challenger gets what's left over. The choice is yours." Then when he makes his decision, then we go from there. But what we do is we have the 4 sets of gloves laid out. Whoever goes first can put their hands in, feel, you know, do whatever they want to do with the gloves. Because believe it or not, the gloves are not, it's just like trying on blue jeans. You might wear a size 32, 31 blue jeans, put them on, buy the same exact size, get home, try them on, and they don't fit. And the same things with the gloves. So, but the most time it's not the boxer that does this, it's the chief second. He gets in, he gets a feel for the glove, and he picks a pair. And he says, "This is my number 1 pair." He says, "Okay." So then you take it and you write that information on the glove and you sign it. And then you set it aside. Then the next person does the same thing. And then the 3rd pair, and then you have the 4th pair. Now, the number 1 pair is what's worn into the ring. The 2nd pair are backup gloves in case something happens in the ring. And this has happened in the past where a glove might split or something like that, and it has to be replaced. So that's what the backup pair is for. Now, once those gloves are picked and signed and marked, They're put into a bag or a box, and either the sanctioning body supervisor will keep them, or some state commissions will say, we want to keep them. And what I hate is when they say, we'll give them to the referee, and the referee will
you don't
them.
want any more on your plate.
I'm being honest with you. I don't want any more on my plate. You said it right, Mo. Because now you're responsible for sitting on them all night and bringing them to the arena and haul them around. And then once you're at the arena, also at the room meeting, you set the time of when they're going to do the hand wraps, and you bring the gloves there and present the gloves. Okay. And of course, there's an inspector in the dressing room to make sure that, nothing happens to the gloves and all that. And so that's the basic process of handling the gloves. Now, when the gloves are put on, I tell the boxers, the chief second, I want the nibs cut off. That's the little plastic tip on the end. That's just something that I do. You don't have to, but that's something that I asked for. And then I asked that the gloves be tied on the back, not on the underneath.
Okay.
And that most states, that is the rule. The gloves are to be tied on the back. And then I also instruct that the tape on your glove, you'll see a line here, and usually a trademark, but there's a crease there, and the glove will bend. And I'll say, I don't want any tape beyond that. And if there is, and you come into the ring, you're going to have to remove it and retape it. And that's the thing, skinning the gloves. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not. Skinning of the gloves is a way that they're able to pull the glove very tight, and it reduces the padding at the knuckles. And you can usually tell that a glove has been skinned by where the tape is on the hand. So when you see these gloves and the tape is like all the way here, that glove's been skinned.
Yeah, for sure.
So these are things that you want to look for.
So do you think there's any way that there's any validity to those claims that Deontay claimed then, or do you think that that's kind of just in his head?
I don't think there's any validity to it, but I will also say that tampering of the gloves has happened before. And it's happened in major fights. They say Margarito. There was a question there with his wraps being doctored. Billy Collins Jr. and can't think of the guy's name right now. Luis Risto. That was a tragic incident of glove tampering that just completely ruined a boxer's career, and he ended up committing suicide after that bout.
Wow. Yeah, I know of the Margarito one, because he had, like they said, what do they call them? Cement wraps almost. They put some kind of plaster on the wraps that made them harden, and he was just destroying people's faces. Yeah, that was too much. Yeah, I don't. So I guess you're right. I guess there could be. History shows that it's happened, but I just think Deontay has never experienced something like that since he's been in the boxing ring. Granted, he started late, right? He started when he was 19. So. But that's the first time I think anyone's ever gotten the boxing ring and like made Deontay feel like he was the dominant fighter. And I just don't think Deontay knew how to handle that.
I refereed Deontay in Cincinnati, and he's a guy that comes all out from the opening bell. And he's a guy that you have to be very careful in the ring, because it's all go. And he is one of the biggest boxers that I've ever come across, and he's just so unorthodox. I mean, the punches are coming from all over. So
yeah, his name really suits his punches. They are just wild, especially when he gets someone in trouble. He's just teeing off on them from every angle that you can imagine.
He wants to end it. He wants to end it. And. But so when you say stop, He's one that you really have to make sure that he hears it and actually be ready to step in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. Is there a fighter that you've wanted to or wish you've had a chance to like ref one of their fights?
You know, I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew that I was going to be asked that earlier today. And the honest answer is, I want to ref everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody deserves to ref anybody else but me. And I think all referees feel that way.
For sure. For sure.
I think all referees feel that way. But honestly, we're just happy to be in there. We're just happy to have the opportunity to do that. Now, and think about that when I say opportunity. What other sport, professional sport known worldwide, where Joe Blow can get in the ring and have the opportunity for a world title or to work a world championship to be seen worldwide? No other sport.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the NBA, I think, doesn't the NBA have a rule where you have to be a college graduate to be, or in college to be drafted?
For a year.
Major League Baseball. Yeah. I mean, Major League Baseball, they'll have walk-ons, but in the 30, 40 years I've been covering baseball, I can't think of anybody other than Ron LaFleur. I take that back. Ron LaFleur was a walk-on
Mm-hmm.
for the Detroit Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
But how many walk-ons come on football? So boxing to me is like, wow, this is the one big sport where just anybody can become a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even from the fighter's perspective, like we were just talking about Deontay, he was a truck driver. And then at 19, he was like, I think his daughter got diagnosed with a spine condition. So that's why he took up boxing. And it's just crazy how anyone at any time can really, and I think that shows in his case, because it's pretty clear that he doesn't have the ring savvy or the boxing skills that a lot of these guys have. But I mean, if you've got the power, right, and he's clearly made a career out of it.
Yeah. And you know, one guy that falls into what you're saying, and he's from he's not from Michigan, but he got his start because of what was going on in Michigan through the old Tough Man contest. I don't know if you guys were around when we had the Tough Man contest, or if you're familiar with that or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Art Dorr from Bay City started a program called the Tough Man contest, and it was basically set up for bouncers to get into a boxing ring. And they wore 16-ounce gloves. I think they fought for a minute or 2 minutes, and it was just tough man standing. And it was an elimination contest. You fought on Friday, and then you advanced into Saturday. And people actually paid to fight.
Oh, geez.
They didn't pay you to fight. You paid Art Dorr to fight in this program. So one of the guys that came out of this one guy that came out of the Tough Man program was Eric Etch, who's better known as Butterbean.
Oh, really?
Have you ever heard of Butterbean?
I have heard of Butterbean. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did he fight professionally in boxing? Yeah. He did? Okay.
Yeah, he became the king of the 4-rounders. And some people criticized him for that. But it was a very good, marketable thing, and Bob Arum was involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
They had Mia St. John. She was known as the queen of the 4-rounders, and Butterbean was known as the king of the 4-rounders.
Mm-hmm.
And Butterbean could fight, and Butterbean had a good jaw, but most of all, he could box, and he had a heck of a lot of power. But his whole thing that he developed was he only had to fight 4 rounds. So he had a whole career out of that and did very well for himself. He even had a video game. They made a video game about him. So, do you remember that one? Yeah.
I do remember that.
Wow.
So I know we talked a lot about some of the male boxers, but I see you have it on here that you did one of Clarissa Shields' fights. And I think we kind of spoke about her a couple of episodes back where we were mentioning about how she just kind of refrains herself from sex, like I think 6 weeks up to a fight. I don't want to ask you just about like when you did one of her matches, like what did you see in her? Because I think it was 2017. I think Ethan showed or said, what did you see in her during that fight that you may not have seen from other fighters?
I think, and that's a very easy question to answer. She is the most technically sound female boxer that I have seen.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that she moves around the ring, the way that she delivers her punches and her defense. Technically sound from top to bottom. That's what puts her above, I believe, all the other female boxers that are out there. And I don't want to say that, well, I will say it. There is a difference between men and women. That's a given. And even in some things that they do, for instance, throwing a baseball, the way that a man throws a baseball is different from the way that a woman throws a baseball. And I think that it has to do with bone structure and muscle structure. And Clarissa is able to throw her punches more in the style of a man than in the style of a woman. And I don't know whether why that is, but it is.
Mm-hmm. I have great respect. I know we talked about this on the phone, Frank, but as far as female athletes in general, but especially, because we're talking about boxing, when you've gotten males that are pumped full of testosterone, obviously, and they are bigger, they have more muscle mass, and they can rely on their given sport on just sheer athleticism. Women are forced to become fundamentally masters at whatever sport that they're in, whether it's boxing, like we're talking about. You see it in basketball, how men can just fly to the rim and dunk on people. Women, they're not like that. They don't have that athletic ability, and they're focusing more on their skills. And I think that really rings true when you watch, female in any sport. But yeah, in boxing specifically, you can just tell there's not lazy fighters. A lot of them, they know how to move around the ring. They know how to slip punches. They're just technically sound fighters. And it's really fun to watch.
I would defer from what you just mentioned, Ethan.
How?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him too.
Really? All right, let's hear it.
Because you have to really look at it like, even though she's technically sound, he just mentioned she has a fight. She's from the fights that I've seen, she still has power in her punches, and that takes,
definitely.
You know what I mean? That still takes some athleticism, right? They may not have the same reach to some things as far as like jumping and stuff like that, but they're, as far as power, quickness, agility and stuff like that, women can still, be on par with men when it comes to that. So, I mean, Frank, you can talk to your experience with it, but.
Well, I was just going to say, don't ever question the strength of a woman. I mean, if you've ever worked on a farm or been on a farm and you see what a female animal goes through when they deliver birth, and coming from a family of 10, if you could see firsthand the strength of a mother raising children and giving birth to children, never ever question the strength of a woman, never question the heart of a woman. You ever get a woman mad? Hell no, no fury.
No,
whatever that saying
Talk
goes.
To her, Frank. Talk to her, Frank.
Again, I'm just
That's
playing on
that's the voice of experience.
No, again, I'm just referring to the athletic ability. Again, yeah, I know women, especially like you're saying, Clarissa, she has that power for sure. It's just, I think women are more fundamentally sound in most women's sports that I've watched. I truly do believe that. I feel like there are men that are so freakishly athletic that they don't need to perfect their. Deontay Wilder is a perfect example of that, right? Like, he is not a boxer. He is just he's a freak with that straight right hand. It's incredible. We can talk about that later. I think that's probably the strongest right hand I've ever seen in the history of the sport. But women, they're just, especially in basketball, I see it too. They're just more technically, their fundamentals are there. They can't be lazy. They can't cheat the game. They have to give it 100% as far as the fundamentals go. And I just respect seeing sports played that way, where, the fundamentals, all the pillars are the foundation of their game is, really strong. And I think that men can cheat that in a way. And that's all that I was saying.
Well, let me add this, and Mo touched this a little bit on this. This is an observation that I've made. I see women being trained by trainers who train men boxers, and they train. This is, again, just my opinion. I feel that they train them to go 3 rounds. They do train them to go 2 rounds, but what I mean by that is a male boxer is trained to do what he's going to do in 3 minutes. And I think there needs to be a train of thought for the women to be trained to do what they're going to do in 2 minutes, setting them up. They're going to have to do the setup within the first 30 seconds, as opposed to the first minute of the round. It's just like you said in basketball. I think we touched on that. In women's basketball, you see more of the zone or box defense than you do the one-on-one defense, because they concentrate on the fundamentals. You see the differences in the softball, women's fast pitch softball, as opposed to baseball. Even though the games are similarly the same, the fundamentals or the mechanics are different. And I think there needs to be some type of better crossover in women's boxing. And I think that when that's done, then the knockouts and all that they want to see will happen, because you do see that in MMA, but the rules are the same, if I'm correct, because I really don't follow MMA, but I think that the rules for the women is exactly the same as the men.
They are
correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because you'll see the knockouts in MMA.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. More often than not. We've talked about this on the phone, but as far as the MMA goes, have you had any opportunity to referee in the MMA, or had any idea into crossing over to the MMA?
Well, when MMA first came out, I was asked, would you like to referee MMA? And I said, no. I said, I don't know the sport. I'm not following it, and I don't think that I will follow it. So I really don't want to be involved in it. And, I've had plenty of opportunity in boxing. So let someone else have the opportunity, someone who's involved in the sport, someone who loves the sport or is part of the sport. Let them have the opportunity, because I've already had my chance. Let someone else have a chance. Mm-hmm. Now, they did talk me into come in and be a judge, and gave me a little background on it and all that. And I did enjoy it, but it's again different from boxing altogether. You have to understand the ground game. The guy can be down on his back and the other guy on top of him, but the guy that's got his back on the ground is actually winning the ground game per se. So it's totally different, but it's not my sport. I wish them the very best. They're doing very well, and people enjoy it, but to me, it's just not my bag.
So I want to ask a question, getting back to boxing a little bit. I'm assuming with the sport, you have to have gone to a ton of different venues. And I know that you mentioned that when you went to Iowa, just the reception that you received there and how they just laid out the red carpet for you was bar none. Outside of that, what's been some of your more favorite venues that you had a chance to be in, as far as from a reffing or a judging standpoint?
Here in Michigan, Cobo Hall or Cobo Arena, mm-hmm. and I have to differentiate that because there was Cobo Hall and Cobo Arena. Cobo Arena now is an atrium, and that's where the Pistons used to play. And Cobo Hall is where the auto show is, but they have the Riverfront Ballroom and different ballrooms, and they would have boxing in those. But Cobo Hall itself was for the Detroit boxing scene, that was the place to be. Mm-hmm. And the locker room was one of the stinkiest locker rooms I ever been in my life. But you knew you were in a locker room. You had that, mm-hmm. I'm like at the Colosseum in Rome, the Roman Colosseum, and good atmosphere. And Detroit has probably the most knowledgeable boxing people as fans, mm-hmm. and just the excitement and all that. And I was very grateful to be a part of the boxing scene when we had it at Cobo. The Palace was a good venue. We had a good run there, overseas. I'm going to pose a question to you guys when I talk about this. First, let me ask you guys a question, then I'll mention this arena. Who is the only boxer to win their world title at Tiger Stadium?
Oh, holy moly. I have no idea. That would have to been a long time ago, right?
And I'll give you a hint. It was called Navin Field at the time he won his world championship.
I don't know if that really helps me.
I know
I
this.
have no idea.
Okay, here's the answer. A lot of boxers defended their title there, mm-hmm. but only one boxer won the world title there, and his name is Jake LaMotta.
Oh, okay. What a legend. He beat Sugar Ray Robinson?
Yeah. No, he defeated Marcel Cerdan.
No, I just mean, but
France.
He's beat Sugar Ray Robinson, so he's a legend in my book.
Yeah, he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, yes. Or Sugar Ray Robinson, I'm sorry.
I think they fought like 6 times.
And
yeah.
And I had the opportunity to do some bouts in Paris, and one fight that I did there was at the Marcel Cerdan arena. Mm-hmm. And there's a statue of Marcel Cerdan out front that I got a picture of, and it was just, to me, it was just, wow, I can't believe this. Having met Jake LaMotta and being a big fan of Tiger Stadium, and now mm-hmm. being there where Marcel Cerdan got his start, that was incredible. Any bout that doing in Japan, they are big boxing fans there, mm-hmm. and a lot of history over there. That's great. The Blue Horizon in Philadelphia, that was a big thrill to do a bout there. Mm-hmm. And back early in my career, I did a bout in Lewiston, Maine, at the Ice Arena, and it was the first boxing match they had there since Muhammad Ali, who was then Cassius Clay, knocked out Sonny Liston.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
So that was a thrill to go into that arena.
Definitely.
Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. I have to ask you, since you brought up Detroit, Frank, who is the greatest Detroit boxer of all time? Because we've got a lot of them.
We've got a lot of them, and I don't think that you can. Tommy Hearns.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a no-brainer. Tommy Hearns has accomplished so much in the ring.
So much.
I
mean, he's the, I don't know if he still is, but he was definitely the first boxer to win titles in 5 different weight divisions. I mean, that's unparalleled. I mean, what else can you say, right? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. Unbelievable what he accomplished as a world champion. And I don't even have to think about it. Joe Louis, of course, was a great heavyweight, but when you say what they accomplished in the ring and all that, it's got to be Tommy, without a doubt.
Wow. Because you're also the other people in that pool are Floyd and Sugar Ray Robinson. So that's a pretty big statement to make. I love Tommy. He's one of the greatest. I think it seemed like it was the later rounds with Tommy, or Tommy, he didn't have the strongest legs. I don't know if it was his stamina or what, but he'd come out on fire. I'm thinking specifically of the Hearns Hagler fight or the Hearns Sugar Ray fight. And it just seems like he would tire, or even the Iran Barkley fight. I don't know if you remember that. It's just, he'd come out on fire and then he'd get hit with something. And it was like, whoa, it would just change his whole demeanor. And then he'd go down. It was, definitely one of the
you got to remember when you throw a punch, you leave yourself open.
Yep. Definitely.
And the ones that can counterpunch, and you brought up an interesting point. Everybody says Detroit boxing, Detroit boxing, Detroit boxing. But we have such a big legacy in the state of Michigan.
Right. Like Floyd is from Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
Floyd, and look at Floyd. We got Floyd Sr., Floyd Jr., Roger. The other guy from Grand Rapids, and I don't know if you know him or not, guy by the name of Stanley Ketchel. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
I have not.
I've heard of him. I have heard of him.
Okay. Yeah. Stanley Ketchel was a welterweight.
Okay.
And they said that he probably would have been the greatest boxer ever if a jealous boyfriend didn't catch him with his girlfriend and shot and killed him.
Yeah.
Wow.
But Stanley Ketchel knocked Jack Johnson down
Okay.
in a fight. Stanley was a welterweight. Jack Johnson was heavyweight. It was supposed to be an exhibition, but they got into a real boxing match, and Stanley knocked him down. And of course, Jack got up and put Stanley out for the for the count.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard of him.
Yeah,
we have so many.
We've got Buster Douglas Sr., Buster Douglas Jr. from the Grand Rapids area.
I did not know Buster
Troy
Douglas
Rowland.
was from.
So I did not know that either. Wow.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I keep getting the names mixed up. Buster Douglas is from Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
I meant to say Buster Mathis Sr. and Buster Mathis Jr. They fought for the heavyweight title. Joe Lipsy from the Lansing area. We had Chris Bird, heavyweight champion from Flint, Michigan. Murray Sutherland, the first super middleweight champion of the world from Bay City. Bronco McCart from Monroe, Michigan. So we've had champions from the whole part of the state.
We definitely have, yeah. And you think Hearns is the greatest? I mean, Tommy had a right hand that was out of this world. Like, he'd hit people with it. Specifically, I think about when he knocked out Roberto Duran in 2 rounds. That was one of the most beautifully executed knockouts I've ever seen. And that's on Roberto Duran, who's obviously one of the most legendary boxers that's ever existed. It's just crazy. Do you think that was the golden age? I mean, maybe not for boxing, but at least for like that welterweight, middleweight division back in the 80s? Because you got to think, we had the 4 kings, right? We had Tommy, Sugar Ray, Marvin Hagler, and Duran. But there was so many other guys that no one even knows about that were such great fighters, like Mugabe, Juan Rodan, Iran Barkley, Alan Minter. I just think that's the golden age of that middle to welterweight division of boxing.
Yeah, and here we had Dwight Davison, Mickey Goodwin, and let's see, who else did we have? Wilfred Scipion. Wilfredo Benitez was another one.
Yep.
Pepino Cuevas.
Yep.
Don't forget Pepino Cuevas, who Tommy knocked out to win his first world title.
Yep.
Yeah.
He destroyed
him.
And
there were great battles. Pete Ranzani from California. Doug DeWitt was another one. It was just that was the division. And prior to that, it was the lightweights. We had Duran was a lightweight, Eusebio de Jesus, and Ismael Laguna, Kenny Lane from from the Grand Rapids area, who was what we would call the people's champion. And he's another person from Michigan that maybe your generation doesn't know, and we need to keep it alive. But he fought in his teens, he fought in his 20s, he fought in his 30s, he fought in his 40s, he fought in his 50s, and he fought in his 60s.
Jesus.
And he always came in at 135 pounds. That was his fighting weight from when he was a teenager all the way up when he was in his 60s.
Wow. It's doable.
And he was a boxing coach too. Really nice. You would love to have. It's a shame that you couldn't have him on your show.
Mm-hmm.
But he and I were having lunch one time, and he was talking, but he had his nose broken so many times. Now, when he talked, he sounded like that. And so one of the kids that he was training was sitting there listening to him and I talk. And he goes, "Mr. Lane, you got to get your nose fixed." He says, "I can't understand a word you're saying." And Kenny turned to him and he says, "I don't want to get my nose fixed because I want to fight when I'm 70. And I'll wait till after then to get my nose fixed because I don't want to get it broken."
Get it broken. So, like, Ethan, you mentioned like the 80s, but like for me, like the 90s with the welterweights, like I think that was the era for me where you had people like one of my favorite fighters was Roy Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm.
One of my Pernell Whitaker.
Oh yeah.
Felix Trinidad, like that era of boxing, Oscar De La Hoya, like that era for me was like it, because I think it really became there was a lot more. It was a lot more glitz and glamour to it, but it was just a lot more attention that came to the sport during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me, that era, I think, really kind of drew me to the sport.
Yeah,
I think one of the reasons that happened was what had happened in the mid 70s. And we had the Olympic team that had all the gold medalists.
Yep.
I can't even name them.
Was it like Aaron Pryor, Evander Holyfield? That was a great team.
No. This is before that. It was Leon Spinks, Michael Spinks, Howard Davis Jr., Sugar Ray Leonard.
That's a star-studded.
Davey Armstrong. Yeah, and a couple more. I'm missing a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And we seen them as amateurs and then into the Olympics, and they became very big, and then they became professionals. And then we were watching them on TV. Well, then we had that 4-year lapse for the next Olympics, and then the United States did good again. And then into the 80s and into the 90s, I would probably say that Roy Jones Jr. and Evander Holyfield, that team was probably the last maybe of the Olympic people that captured everybody's attention. But it wasn't. It was that the Olympic program started changing. They started. We don't want boxing, and they cut the bouts and all that. So we didn't get the coverage. But I think what what you went through was a result of what we saw from the Olympic boxing teams that were being brought on TV.
Yeah, I mean, Roy Jones is one of my favorite. I mean, obviously, pound for pound, he was so technically sound, but just his flashiness in the ring, his ability to just trash talk people while he was fighting. And I mean, he'd look at the ref and say, "This guy can't hit me." And then he'd hit him with that right hook. It was like, I've never seen hand speed like that combined with, I don't know. Roy Jones is definitely one of the greatest fighters that I've ever watched.
And, the one thing I have to say about Roy Jones is, Jr. is he got robbed in Korea in his Olympic boxing match, but he didn't let that deter from what he was going to achieve. He just, okay, that's the way they want to call it. That's fine. And he let it go. And he went on and had a spectacular professional career.
Well, it's happened to a couple people. Floyd was robbed. I think Evander was robbed. Do you remember he knocked that guy out, but the ref said stop right before he threw that hook, and he knocked he floored the guy, and they called it a disqualification when Evander Holyfield clearly won. It's I feel like that's happened to American amateur boxers in the Olympics on multiple occasions, so it's kind of crazy. But yeah, you're right that is huge if you're able to just shake that off and continue to, prosper. I do want to talk about someone that didn't get any Olympic attention or anything like that. We got to give a shout out to Marvin Hagler, being that he just passed away. Absolutely legendary career, one of the greatest boxers, definitely one of the greatest middleweights of all time. Had you had any interaction with Hagler? I don't think you've reffed him ever, have you?
No, I never reffed him, but I did get the opportunity to meet Marvin on a couple occasions. Once was in Croatia, and the other one was in Kiev, Ukraine, at the WBC convention. And I had a guitar. Two stories. I had a guitar that I would bring to the convention, and I would tear it apart and put it in my suitcase, and then I would take the body around during the convention, have all the boxers autograph it, and then we would have an auction, and then I would take the money that we made from the auction, I would donate it to the WBC benevolent fund for boxers that are down and out. And I had Tommy, Ray Leonard, and Roberto Duran autographed the guitar.
So
and
you
I
needed
did
the fourth king.
It was a double pickup. Yeah. And Marvin doesn't like the autograph. Okay. So between the two pickups, I had the three of them, and I left a spot for Marvin.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to Marvin, and I says, "Hey, Marvin," I said, "I'm getting autograph." He said, "No, I don't want to sign." I says, "Well," I said, "this is for charity and all." He says, "Don't want to hear it." I says, "Well, that's okay." I says, "I got Tommy, Ray Leonard, and Roberto Duran in there." I said, "I don't think I got room for yours anyway. Give me that." And he took the marker in big letters, "Marvelous Marvin Hagler."
There you go.
Oh, marvelous.
Oh my God.
We both laughed about it. I mean, it wasn't anything malicious or anything
Right.
And we had a good laugh about it,
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "I'm glad you asked me to sign it last." But the other story was Mickey Goodwin was set to fight Marvin Hagler before Tommy Hearns. Okay. And rumor was that Marvin did not want to fight Mickey Goodwin. Now, whether there's any truth to that or not, I don't know. But there's a lot that I do know that it'll be out in my book, as I say. But in Kiev, Ukraine, I got on the elevator, and Marvin's on the elevator with me, and we're the only ones on the elevator. And I can say this now because Marvin's gone. And we get to talking, and I said, "Marvin," he goes, "Yeah, you're from Detroit." And I said, "Yeah, but," I said, "I want to ask you about somebody." And he looked at me. He goes, "What?" He says, "Go ahead." And Marvin was really a very, how do you say it? He was he was approachable. He was really always had a smile on his face, friendly guy, in my opinion. I said, "Mickey Goodwin, what does that mean to you?" And he looked at me and he goes, "That's the toughest white boy I have ever seen in my life." I said, "Well, you were supposed to fight Mickey. Would you have liked to have fought Mickey?" And he goes, "I'll fight Tommy 7 days a week." I said, yeah. I said, "But what about Mickey?" He smiled. He goes, "I'll fight Tommy 7 days a week." And he wouldn't say anything about Mickey.
Wow. Very interesting. That's got to be crazy just having run-ins with guys like that. I mean, you've been in this for over 30 years, so I'm sure it's happened more often than not. Is there ever moments where you're standing there? Is there anyone in particular? Well, you've met Muhammad Ali, haven't you, Frank?
Yeah, I was actually part of a team. We went over to China in the early 90s. China wanted to put a bid into the International Olympic Committee to hold the Olympics there. but they had to prove to the IOC that they were capable of producing and promoting a worldwide event. So they chose a boxing event, and Muhammad Ali was part of the team to go over there and, draw up attention and stuff like that. So I was on the same plane that flew over to Beijing, China, and Muhammad is very, very cordial, very approachable person, loves to joke around. He loved to do magic tricks. He loved to perform magic tricks in front of everybody. And when we were there, he said to everybody, I know everybody wants my time. I will come down to your hotel, because he stayed at a different hotel, but he said, I'll come down every morning for breakfast with you guys. And I will give you each so much, I'll come in for an hour, and four guys can come in and talk to me 15 minutes about anything that you want to talk to. And what a great guy. He offered that because, it was true. Everybody wanted, to meet and greet him. And he was always, would take a picture with you, sign autographs, everything like that. Another boxer that's like that is really good to his fans that you might not think would be, is Roberto Duran.
He's scary looking. I would not think that at all.
Roberto Duran loves his fans.
Wow.
Yeah. When you want Roberto Duran to come to ringside, you better announce him to come to ringside 2 hours before you want him in the ring, because he will stop and shake hands and sign autographs everybody as he's coming up.
That's like shocking to me. How you describe Marvin Hagler as far as like no autographs, that's how I would picture Roberto Duran, just kind of like get the hell out of here. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. Maybe that was just his ring presence then, is clearly the case. That's crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Muhammad Ali, though, do you think he's the greatest heavyweight that's ever existed?
Not in my book. And
Nope.
and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I look at it as what they accomplished in the ring and their skill level and things like that. My number one guy is Larry Holmes.
Really?
Yeah.
The successor.
I think Larry Holmes in his prime, what a beautiful boxer he was.
It's funny you say that, because he had no publicity, and maybe it was because he was stepping out. He was the first heavyweight after Muhammad Ali. But I think specifically to his fight with what was the guy's name? Cooney. He was white. It was like, and there was a big thing at the time. It was like the Great White Hope. Is he gonna win the title? And he's the challenger. And they announced his name. They announced Larry Holmes' name first, and then they announced Jerry Cooney's name in the ring during the ring announcements. And just seeing stuff like it's just like, wow, that's really disrespectful to the heavyweight champ of the world. And this guy's accomplished so much.
I'm not sure of the day, but I think I started in '83. But anyway, back in the early '80s, I had the opportunity. I was in Portland, Oregon, with Ezra Charles and Larry Holmes. And we're at the bar having drinks. And Larry Holmes was just like an average type guy that came out of the factory and went up to the bar, and you're having a beer with him. He's just a great person. I really like Larry Holmes. He's one of my favorites. I asked him that day, what was your biggest accomplishment in boxing? And he said, my biggest accomplishment is I fought for Don King and I have all my money. And he then laughed, and we both laughed. We both laughed about that. This is a true story. He's got a statue of himself out in front of his house. This is what I heard.
Nothing wrong with it.
And people or people will stop at the front of his house to take a picture or something. If he sees somebody stopped in front of his house, he'll come out so that they can take the picture with him.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
That to me is what a great guy he is. Now, Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney, I'll try to tell this story as quickly as I can. I went to Indianapolis to do a fight. And after the fight, we went back to the hotel, and I asked the people that I'm with, the other officials, there's about 4 of us, hey, you want to get together and we'll order a pizza to have something to eat because there's nothing to eat. I'll call in, have it carried in. I said, yeah, let's do that. So I go to a phone booth. Now, this is before cell phones and all this. We're back about 84, 85. And as I go to dial it, this guy comes up and he says, you the guy ordering pizza? I said, yeah. He says, well, order pizza for everybody. And I look around and there's about 40, 50 people there, you know, and I says, oh, come on. I said, yeah, who's going to pay for it? He pulls out a big wad of money. He says, I'll pay for it. Just order pizza for everybody. So I order, I don't know, 20, 30 pizzas, you know, and they deliver them. Guy pays for them. And he says, I want to introduce you to somebody. And he takes me over to a table and there's a guy there. He said, this is Jerry Cooney. Now, Jerry Cooney's just getting started. And he says, he's going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. I said, oh, okay. And Jerry reaches, shakes my hand. He says, you the guy that ordered the pizzas? I said, yeah. He says, oh, thank you. He said, I'm so hungry. Sit down. Let's have a pizza. So I sat down with Jerry and we just had small talk and ate pizza and had fun. And I left. And I had my buddy with me, Gary Merritt, who's a boxing judge. And we worked for years and years. We're like best friends. And we leave. Everything goes. Now, fast forward about 5 or 6 years. And Gary and I are in Miami, Florida for another boxing thing. And we're walking down the street and we see this guy running and all these TV cameras filming him. Mm-hmm. And there's 5 lanes, 6 lanes of traffic on the other side of the street. And I look and I says, hey, I said, that's Jerry Cooney. And Gary says, hey, you think he remembers us? And we're laughing because of what had happened in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, right. Next thing I hear, hey, Frankie, hey, Gary. And he runs across the street in traffic. Jesus. And there's so much traffic, the camera crew isn't even going across the street. And he's running in place. He goes, man, good to see you guys. Man, I had so much fun in Indianapolis. You guys are the greatest. But there's no embellishment in this at all. Runs back across the street. They'd start filming again. From that day on, I became the biggest Jerry Cooney fan in the world.
Well, he almost became the heavyweight champ, right?
I say this in complete sincerity. To this day, I have not watched the Jerry Cooney, Larry Holmes fight because I have nothing but total respect for both of those guys that I just didn't have the heart to see either one of them in the ring.
Wow.
That's how much respect I have for both of those guys.
Wow.
Very interesting.
So,
well,
and I've met Jerry and seen Larry times over the years, and they're just 2 of the greatest gentlemen from the sport of boxing you'd ever want to meet. Mm-hmm. But what are you guys? What's your take on this? Like Tyson and Holyfield, Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. Now they're talking about Oscar De La Hoya coming back, Eric Morales coming back. I personally don't like it. I don't like it. To me, it goes back to the MMA thing. Let someone else have a chance, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And
you should have ate the pie when they put it in front of you.
Yep. You're right. I don't understand it because I was at a watch party for the Tyson Roy Jones fight, and just seeing, because everyone wanted to watch it, right? They're all kids my age. It's Mike Tyson. They've never seen him fight. But just the people there and just listening to what they're saying, they've clearly they're not boxing fans. They're not knowledgeable of the sport. I was telling Mo this on an earlier podcast. I heard a bunch of people yelling like, come on, Mike, like knock this bum out. And I'm like, do you not know who Roy Jones Jr.
like, have
is?
no respect for Roy.
Exactly. It's just like these people, you know, they're, I don't know. I think they should kind of get more into real boxers. Like these guys that are older, they were legends. Yeah. But like their time's done. And like you said, let's let the new generation come in and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to really help if they can get back to what Frank was mentioning about in his childhood. And I think it's been helping with ESPN showing fights, is getting back to showing fights on, regular like cable television.
That's
Once
what
they
I
can
want to see.
get back to that, I think that can build a lot more of that interest to where you can get some more of those household names. Because right now everything's a pay-per-view and it's like $60-$70 for a fight. And I don't know, people are always just willing to spend that much.
For sure. I mean, you watch the greatest fights ever. I mean, Frank, the Ali, Frazier, and stuff like that. That was just on general cable, correct? I mean, like these legendary fights that people could just watch.
When I was a kid, and we did not have VCRs, and there was no reruns, it was all live.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturday, we had fights late Friday night, the Gillette fights, Patch Blue Ribbon fights on Friday night. And then Saturday afternoon, we would have fights coming out of California. And then Sunday was Wide World of Sports. But the Saturday and Sunday, I saw Danny Little Red Lopez, Tony Simpson, Alan Mentor. All of these guys were on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you had to schedule what you were doing so you could watch these fights because there was no replay and nothing. So you had that anticipation. Yeah, so that drove your desire too. But like you said, the fights they had were just great fights on free TV. Mm-hmm. And of course, yeah, you did have stinkers, but Larry Holmes would fight on ABC on Friday and Saturday night on primetime TV once, 2 or 3 times a year. So this was pre-cable. So that's the way it was. I'd love to see it go back to that.
I would too. And I'm glad that ESPN is airing some of their, big boxers that have contracts with them on, regular TV. I know Vasily Lomachenko had some of his fights on there and stuff like that. But I would like to see it revert back to that as well. It just, like Mo just said, just to get people familiar with these boxers again. Because a lot of people I know, at least in my circle, and I'm the biggest boxing fan, a lot of them don't know these guys. And I think that's what it is. It's not pushed in your face anymore. It's, hey, you have to pay $100 if you want to watch these people fight.
Well, another part of the program or part of the problem is the media, the exposure. Growing up myself, we had 2 big newspapers here in Detroit, the Detroit News and Detroit Free Press. And the papers today are not anything like that, what they used to be. Mm-hmm. And Detroit, I found to be very interesting. Back in the 70s, you never saw anybody. I don't care if it was just a street bum or a General Motors executive walking down the street without a newspaper. Mm-hmm. And we had great coverage. I mean, the paper had 4 or 5 sections, and the sports page was covered everything. And you could read about Tommy. You could read about all the boxers, not only of Detroit, but all throughout the United States and the world. So you got your exposure. But the newspapers got into something that they had to make money, and that meant that they had to sell advertisement. And they relied heavily on advertisement rather than the subscriber. Mm. And say Buick or Nike was a big sponsor for the newspaper. Well, who did they want covered? They wanted somebody maybe like Tiger Woods or Jack Nicholson, who drove a Buick or wore the Nike swatch on their thing. They didn't want Tommy Hearns or somebody else that didn't wear the advertisement because they weren't being sponsored. I mean, if I'm paying you $50,000 to put my ad in the paper, I want to see people that are wearing my logo. And I think that's what happened. I think things like that took the coverage, and people weren't becoming aware of what was going on in the sport. Because now.
So I have one last question for me. So what do you hope has been your impact on the sport?
that I gave everybody a fair chance. You know, as a referee, the one thing that you don't want to do or not do in the ring is be a part of the decision because of something that you said or something that you done or you didn't do. You want the boxers to be able to decide who the winner is themselves. And you just stand back and you let them operate within the parameters of the rules. I've seen too many referees get too involved in the bout, and I think that's wrong. I don't think that's what we're there for. I've seen referees say, you know, don't do this, do this, to the point where it's almost coaching, and I think that they're crossing the line. And one of the nicest things that I've had said to me by a number of boxers is, you know, Frank, I always liked it when I saw that you were going to be in the ring because I knew I had a fair shot, that you were going to let things, you were going to keep things fair and square. And he said, that's what I always respected about you. So that's the legacy that I hope to leave when I go.
Nice.
Yeah.